Hi, I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and we couldn't be happier to host the 4th annual Insight Jam. I want to thank everyone who's participating this week, as well as our Insight Jam sponsors, DataStax, Monte Carlo, Denodo, High Gear, and Seller Data. I also want to thank our Solutions Review editors and staff for pulling this event together. When we started this in 2019, we wanted to take a moment at the end of the year to celebrate enterprise technology with a social media event offering best practices and predictions. This will be our biggest jam ever, including 16 live-streamed expert panel discussions over 4 days. And we intend to keep the insights flowing in 2023 with the launch of an expert subscription site for any tech professional who wants to publish posts on Solutions Review. Again, thank you all for being here and enjoy the Insight Jam.
Solutions Review presents Insight Jam, a social media celebration of enterprise technology. Good afternoon and welcome to the 4th and final panel of the afternoon. My name is Jonathan Paula, the Director of Multimedia here at Solutions Review. I have collected another group of expert panelists to discuss our 4th panel today, Data Access versus Compliance and the Future of Cloud Data Protection. Gentlemen, it is a pleasure to have you all joining me, including Mark Diamond, who showed up just at the last second. Mark, anytime you want to turn on your camera would be much appreciated, but we will continue as if we can see you, plain and simple. Demetrius, you're back again to moderate for us. Thank you for offering your services. I'll let you start with the introduction, 60 seconds or so. Explain to the audience your background if they don't already know it, and what excites you to talk about this topic today. And good luck.
Awesome. I'll keep it short and sweet. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am your moderator, Demetrius Malbrough. I am also the founder and CEO of Data Protection Gumbo. And Data Protection Gumbo provides technical marketing and technical evangelism as a service through media such as podcasting and also other content creation services as well. So glad to be the moderator here. And also, I am super excited to have this conversation with all of the other panelists. So, Mark, since you just joined, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for everyone here?
Thank you very much. This is Mark Diamond. I'm president and CEO of Contoro. We're the largest independent provider of information governance consulting. We work with about 30% of the Fortune 500, really helping them comply with privacy, records retention, data security classification rules for all data across the enterprise and all data across the world.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you for that introduction, Mark. AJ, what about you?
Hey, everyone. I am Ajay Patel. I have around 15 plus experience in data domain. Currently working with Immuta as a growth product manager, and helping customer with their data governance and security journey, and kind of helping solving their solution problems through product side of it. So yeah, happy to be here and glad to be part of the panel.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction, AJ. Ben, you're up next.
So first, hi everybody. I'm Ben. I'm chief scientist for Satori. We're a data security platform allowing companies to process data and make use of data in a secure way, applying security policies on data and allowing self-service data access. I'm also a co-author of Snowflake Security, a book published on APRESS, and before that, a bunch of roles around data, security, research leadership, and CTO. So that's me. And hi, everybody.
Awesome. Wow. Snowflake Security, I think you said. That's pretty awesome, Ben. Dave, why don't you introduce yourself next?
Sure. My name is Dave Birmingham. I am currently the Director of Customer Success at Sios Technology. I've been there coming up on 19 years now, various different roles. Sios is a software company that focuses on the high availability, disaster recovery, and data availability space. So I get to work with customers all the time, helping them with business continuity, disaster recovery, and just the availability of business critical applications. I'm also a Microsoft Cloud and Data Center MVP. So most of the work I've been doing recently has been focused on cloud availability. And I've been an MVP for Microsoft for the past 12 years, initially in high availability failover clustering, and then recently in cloud and data center.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. I really enjoy meeting other and new Microsoft MVPs. Rob, last but not least, you're up.
Thanks so much, Demetrius, and hello to everybody watching. Thanks for taking the time. Rob Peterson, CEO of Infrascale. We operate in the data availability and data protection space, offering both application backup and recovery, standard sort of cloud-based backup and recovery, and then a full suite or full spectrum disaster recovery as a service. Unlike my esteemed colleagues, I come from more of a finance, VC, and PE background. But this space has been extremely interesting. It's obviously a critical need for enterprises and the channel that we partner with, and appreciate you guys having me on board.
Well, awesome. And so since we are at data access versus compliance, and also the future of cloud data protection, let's go ahead and dive into some questions here related to that topic. And also, Mark, I am going to unfortunately pick on you once again. The question that I specifically have for you, and anyone else can chime in after this, is what are some of the challenges that businesses go through as it pertains to complying with privacy regulations, like getting a handle on data retention policies, and also determining what data to keep and for how long, or what should be deleted?
I think it's a huge struggle for organizations, and they're being buffeted by a number of that. The traditional approach for a lot of organizations is to sort of save everything forever. It became a storage problem to say, well, if we don't want to do it on-prem, we need to be able to move it to the cloud. And I think the cloud is obviously a better technology for being able to do that. But now we got a problem. There are a lot of the information that organizations save is sensitive information, it's personal information. And they're not allowed to keep it forever. Matter of fact, there's very limited times on how they can be able to keep it. Some of that is sensitive information. Obviously, there are very strict rules on avoiding breaches. And so there are a lot of cyber criminals that are looking at as a fairly big target. The days that we can just have storage sit out there is, you have storage pile up, I think we're very quickly moving past. I think that during the last 10 years, we saw organizations worried about over retention for e-discovery purposes. I think particularly in the US, and particularly, quite frankly, starting in 2023, the idea of over retention of personal information is going to hit home very significantly, because not only California, but another number of other states are introducing a lot of rules that say you got to know what you have, you can't keep it too long, and you've got to keep it protected. And we can't look at it as just data. We have to know what we have and apply the right rules to it.
Okay. Well, Rob, do you have anything to add to that one?
Yeah, no, I think Mark hit it on the head. This is an ever-evolving situation and landscape in terms of what you retain, how it's safeguarded, where it's located. I'll just add that the opportunity exists as well to better cost optimize based on what you do want to ring fence, what your availability needs are for most critical data, and then ultimately the retention policies that you put in place to manage cost in whatever environment you're storing in.
Okay, great. And just shifting a little bit, I was also taking a look at AJ's profile. So AJ, according to Statista, it's a data company, and also IDC, the total volume of data created, captured, copied, and also consumed worldwide by 2024 will cross 149 zettabytes. Now that's a lot of data. And it's going to cross that every year, and much of it will be unstructured data. So the question for you is, I guess, as data continues to increase, why do you think companies will struggle to keep that data secure, especially within the compliance and regulations, privacy regulations that we have out there? And also, what are your recommendations for solving the data access dilemma associated with this influx of data, AJ?
So first of all is that all these data which is being collected and stored, it creates more data. It's not just the end of it, right? Because all the analytics which happens, all the insight which has been generated, which creates more data on the top of this data. So the challenge is, how do we kind of protect this data or make sure that only the right amount of people have access to it? Because one of the growing challenges is not just to secure data on the hardware or network level or the application level, but making sure that all the people or the users who have access to the data, they have the access to the right data, and they don't have access to more than they need. So another thing is that with all the big data or the growing amount of data, you have to have policies in place or a structure in place, especially on the data source side, which is scalable, because because of the growth, and especially with the cloud, the data is not just on one cloud. Data is on premises, it's on Amazon, my Azure, cloud. So it becomes much more crucial that whatever policy has been applied or whatever technology is kind of making sure that data is protected or within the compliance, it has to be scalable, it has to be automated, and it works across most of these platforms as a single source of truth.
Okay.
I'd like to add to that. So first of all, I completely agree. So that's one thing. I also would like to add that the growth is not only in the data being transmitted and the amount of data that is being transmitted, stored, processed, and made use of. It's also, there's a growth in the amount of data users within organizations who are making use of data. And this creates an interesting time for us right now and in the upcoming years, where more people within organizations are making use of data. So, which is a great thing. We're seeing a lot of innovation coming out of it, and a lot of data-driven decision making and everything, which is great. But also a growth in regulations, compliance, and security risks around data. So this creates a gap. Organizations need to share data in a much more frequent way, in a much more agile way. There's a big understanding, and if you're looking at what the analysts are saying as well, there's a big understanding that the companies who will be able to share data in a broader way within the organization while keeping security will win. It creates a conflict. You have data, some of it is sensitive, and you need to be very agile about knowing where your sensitive data is within all of your data, and granting and revoking access in a very seamless and quick way. Add to that the macroeconomical challenges that we are sort of facing or not facing in 2023, and we're in very interesting data processing times.
Yeah, all great points. And I'm going to go ahead and bring you into the conversation, Dave. And, what I've seen overall is that all companies have business critical applications ranging from databases to, let's say, SAP infrastructure. And let's say if one of these applications happen to go down, and even if that's for a minute, there are huge financial repercussions. And also, not to mention a diminished reputation with customers. What are the best ways to make sure that you have a solid disaster recovery strategy for these business critical applications, Dave?
Sure. So when people talking about availability, there's two levels, right? There's high availability or fault tolerance, where depending upon how much downtime is acceptable, and they're usually measured in the number of nines. 99.99% availability is typically the baseline of what's considered highly available, which covers most of your business critical applications. There are some applications that require fault tolerance, which is basically no downtime. But in the SAP environments, the database environments, typically the high availability 4 nines are covered in some sort of high availability clustering solution. And whether you're talking about open source solutions on Linux or third-party solutions like Sios Lifekeeper, or in Windows, your Windows Server Failover clustering, there's clustering technology to monitor and manage the application availability, detect failures, automate the recovery of those things. But of course, all those applications rely on data. So the data is critical in terms of availability. Traditional on-prem data centers might have all your data in some highly redundant SAN storage area network with redundancy all over the place. Challenge is with people moving into the cloud, where traditional SAN technology is not really an option. You have to look at other solutions. So there's managed services where the cloud vendor will provide storage solutions and handle replication behind the scene, which is one way. Challenge is there is that it's not always compatible with application availability. So there are other solutions that will do block level volume replication that also integrate with clustering solutions, and we call that a SANless cluster. So you still get your traditional high availability clustering solution that also handles the data availability through some block level replication. And the block level replication is nice in that it really is application agnostic, and even with SIOS OS agnostic, so solutions across Windows and Linux, that will make sure that the application is available in the cloud. You're talking between availability zones for high availability. But you mentioned disaster recovery, which is really another layer of availability, which usually has less stringent recovery time objectives, recovery point objectives, but the same solution that handles the cross availability zone or cross data center failover for availability can also be extended greater distances for cross region failover in the cloud, or even across to your DR site across higher latency networks through the use of asynchronous replication. So many companies are looking to solutions that address both high availability and disaster recovery as defined with their business continuity plans.
Well, Dave, you really knocked that one out of the park, man. Let's bring Rob. Let's bring you into the conversation, and I'm sure you see a lot of things over there at InfraScale. And we all know the cringe-worthy term that's primarily used every day, and it's called ransomware, right?
Uh-huh.
We heard lots of horror stories of how these attacks have had numerous financial ramifications and businesses taken offline, et cetera. But what are some of the ways that small businesses can minimize or maybe even prevent ransomware from taking down their operations?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Demetrius. Definitely a key topic for us at InfraScale, something we think about daily. Frankly, I think we all know incidents of ransomware attacks is increasing. I think we also know that sophistication of bad actors and demands on cloud infrastructure are outpacing the actual infrastructure build itself and the tools and technologies used to protect those environments. So it's pretty ripe, and the cost is growing exponentially, and it doesn't appear as though there's any major detraction from a cost perspective for these bad actors to continue the work they're doing. So to answer your question, I think it's important that you offer a full spectrum DR service and you test that for its efficacy. You follow a policies and procedures framework that allows you to illuminate the various metrics that point to efficacy of that BCP program or DR program. NIST framework is pretty commonly used in the industry. And on the front end of whatever your solution stack is, it's important you have some type of cyber recovery tools in place. So threat detection, remediation, things that allow you to identify what the threat is, the scope or scale of that threat, and then begin to sort of piece back together how you want to bring up your environment and port that over to your secondary location.
And Ben, I'm not sure. Have I picked on you yet? I'm not sure I asked you a specific question. I haven't. Not yet.
Not yet. But
Okay.
even if you have, you're welcome.
All right. So I have one for you. So it's been said that, databases are, full of the organization's crown jewels, so data. And they also store lots of critical information. You also have proprietary databases out there like MS SQL, Oracle, DB2, and you also have some open source databases out there as well, PostgreSQL, MariaDB, and CockroachDB, to name a few. So when you talk about ensuring that your organization is in compliance and private data is secure, what are some of the ways companies can enhance their auditing and data access capabilities, Ben?
Wow. So there's a lot around compliance. So I will name some of the common things that we see. So first of all, it's something that sounds trivial, but auditing of data access across all of these platforms that you mentioned and others, which sounds like a straightforward thing. It's not always a straightforward thing. I'll give just a couple of examples. One example is that in many cases, there are issues with semi-structured data that is retrieved as part of the data, and in many cases is not detailed enough, both for auditing as well as for security controls, data privacy, anonymization, masking, and so on. So that is something that is common. Another example is that I've seen a lot of organizations, both working at Satori and before that, where they connect many users, sometimes the entire organization, using a single user. For example, like they connect their BI tool to their data warehouse or their databases, or to whatever data platform it is, and they're using one user to connect. And then in your audit, it makes it very hard to understand if Ben was looking at specific sensitive data, or was it you? So that is another thing that is common and challenging in data access. And overall, I would say that the third thing that is very common is where people need access to data. For example, where for compliance frameworks like SOC 2, you need to have your engineers you need to make them go through certain controls when they go to production data, and you want to do that without either opening access to everybody, or on the other hand, reduce your SLA, SLO when you need to actually go into data to fix stuff. So those are, I think, key examples.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate that. Mark, and do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, and I think Ben touched on this a little bit, which is that a lot of when organizations focus around compliance on data, their first target is typically the structured data and the applications. And I think obviously a lot of privacy, for example, lives in structured data and applications. When we do personal information inventories, though, with a company, they typically underestimate the amount of personal information they have by a factor of 2 or 3. And a lot of times this sensitive data, whether it's personal data, intellectual property, trade secrets, whatever, also exist in great quantities in unstructured data files, in semi-structured data emails, and other places like that. And so I worry sometimes that companies, when they're talking about data compliance, are just focusing on the databases, which are important, but they may be significantly missing and putting at risk a lot of other repositories and other systems and other types of media data out there that presents an equal, if not greater, risk for them.
Interesting. AJ, would you like to jump in there as well?
Yeah, I wanted to touch base on one specific thing. You raised a very good point where a lot of companies and enterprise organizations now adopting to open source technologies, right? Like Postgres, MySQL, these are the technologies that are very well known, well adopted, right? But at the same time, the challenge becomes, and I want to take one of the example which Ben gave, where it becomes very challenging in terms of auditing or understanding what is going wrong or who's accessing what. And that's where I think a concept or the framework like ZTA comes in, the zero trust architecture comes into place, where organizations really have to enforce that. And that does not just goes to like who's accessing the data. Like each user or application have to have their own individual authentication mechanism, something like a well-known IDP. All devices needs to be tracked. But coming back to the data access and the security point of view, that the data have to be governed on the data source level, so that it's controlled not just from the data source, it's also controlled on the application level as well. So I believe that ZTA kind of architecture is really helpful to avoid certain situations and to improve the security, overall data access and security for any organization.
All right, I am going to throw up some toss-up questions now. So not specific. Anyone can jump in at any time. And so this is going to be a super huge question, by the way. So whoever is the first person to answer it, it's going to be very beneficial for the audience that's out there listening right now. So what do you think will be the number one priority for the C-suite in 2023 as it pertains to data management, compliance, and also data protection?
Personal information. I think with the emergence of the U.S., Europe's been there for a while. We're going to see a huge onslaught of European laws, and I think you're not only going to see a number of regulatory fines in the U.S., you're also going to see things like employees that say, oh, by the way, you're going to lay me off. Please show me all your personal information. We're seeing this in Europe. And if you can't, well, let's talk about a bigger severance package for me. I think those type of really are basically data issues, because companies won't be able to find all the personal information associated with employees, will resonate and cause concern among the C-suite.
I want to add to what.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I want to add to something which Mark mentioned. That so I guess it's a very interesting point that the concern is definitely the personal information and how an organization can actually manage it, right? And this is something which, in Immuta, we did a research that 97% of the organization face challenge in terms of data access control implementation challenges. And a lot of time what happens is that that implementation cannot happen because they don't have the right person or the right manager to provide that scalability or control of the data. And that's where I think the important thing comes as a data access control, that, okay, if you have the personal information, how are you going to scale it? How are you going to share it with the right people? And that's where I think, capabilities like auditing and, scalable, access control comes into the place.
I'd like to also add on that, only because you said it's a beneficial question, so I couldn't ignore that. So I think that the main challenge will be, and it sort of adds to what has already been said, is how do we increase the value we get from data, including sensitive data, while keeping security, productivity, and now another factor that will be very common in our challenging financial environment.
And if I could just add someone onto Mark's answer, I think the broader objective to me will be the right categorization, taxonomization, and ultimately tailored solutions depending on the severity or criticality of your data. So of course, PII is of utmost importance, but there are varied types of critical data that need custom solutions that allow for the right level of access controls, the right level of protection, et cetera, and being able to sort of wrap that all into one process, one policy, and make sure that you can kind of handle the different gears and levers needed, I think will be a huge focus.
The rules that people, it's interesting. The rules are getting more complex. The rules are getting more dynamic. The rules are changing more quickly. I think we have to have really a data infrastructure that we don't know what the rules are going to be 2 years from now. We need a data structure that we build today that can meet whatever the rules may be 2 or 3 years from now.
Yep.
And allow us to keep on running our business. A small detail.
Okay.
Yeah, in my experience, obviously working with data availability, the unpredictability of our world, whether it's natural disasters or power outages or cyber attacks or whatever it might be, challenge is when I think of data protection, where most people are on this panel are security experts. I think more of it the data availability of that. So we see people thinking whether it's the next major cloud outage or, like I said, some natural disaster, how do I overcome that to make sure my data is always available? So they're leveraging the cloud infrastructure, or maybe they're looking at multi-cloud configurations, hybrid cloud. This is everything that I see next year for sure, but it's really been ongoing over the past 4 or 5 years, I think.
Okay. Yeah, all very insightful. And something that I just thought about here is, and what I also think the audience would love to hear is, how do you balance data access in a zero trust world? There's a buzzword for you, zero trust, and also keep that data safe and also protected in the cloud. I would like to hear your insights around that. Let's see. Don't all go at the same time. Who shall I pick on? Rob, you smiled the brightest.
Well, I mean, clearly having the right access controls, MFA, if you're using SSO, making sure that that governance policy is sound and intact and clearly aligned with whatever your compliance procedures are, whether it's ISO driven, SOC driven, or otherwise. Making sure that you have all that buttoned up front, and then clearly on the back end, it's hoping for the best but planning for the worst, right? You need to make sure that you feel comfortable with your redundancy and resiliency of your BCP plan, that you're testing that on a regular basis, and you're looking to always enhance it to make sure that you create more of a full spectrum approach to or response to any disaster.
Yeah, I'd say in addition to the data and all the access controls and encryption and monitoring audit, you have to look beyond your data as well, and you have to look, especially in the cloud, you got to look at following best practices for cloud security and implementing least privilege and making sure that your cloud configuration is secure to begin with, so the unauthorized people can't even gain access to your data. So maintaining updates, that's also critically important. So the basics, it really goes back to the basics a lot. You have to make sure those are covered in addition to implementing the zero trust, which is great with the strict access controls and encryption and whatnot.
Following up on Rob's comment, just because you can't do something doesn't mean you won't have to do it. You may have to get access controls and security and all these capabilities, and the rules are moving forward despite what your or any given technology stack may be able to offer. And so to say, well, I don't know how to do that, that may not cut it.
And AJ, did you have anything to add here?
Yeah, I think I want to add to Dave's point that, zero trust is simply on a different level. You're talking about, identity management as well as the data access control, right? And it's very simply that, by default, do we really want to give access to anybody? So this comes to the basic principle of, giving access or least level of access required to user on a data level. And, and this is something which comes very often that, there are different strategies people use, that something like ABAC or RBAC, whether somebody should go for role-based access control or attribute-based access control. And I think I wanted to kind of touch base a little bit on that. This is that a lot of time people, and this is something historical, we have seen that organization creates something which is like role-based access control, where they just create a role and try to add a lot of underlying policies and assign it to individual users to access it, which is not the optimal way for the zero trust architecture. So the best way is basically to have something like ABAC, attribute-based access control, which basically helps organizations to achieve the zero trust, as well as the scalability. Because if you implement that with the right technology, which can scale, which can adopt the data, and we are talking about something which is a centralized piece where there are different data sources like on all the clouds, but you have one policy manager which can push all the policies and provide the same level of access irrespective of where the data resides. I think that's really the game changer kind of thing.
I'd like to attack this from a different angle.
Sure.
Just going back to the basics of zero trust and the need for continuous validation of authentication, authorization, and why don't we have that? I mean, in many organizations, data access policies, which are like you said, keys to the crown jewels, or whatever metaphor we would like to use, and for that, in many cases, organizations have very persistent data access policies where you get your access once, and then maybe after a quarter or two, someone remembers to revoke it, and they think that the data access, not everywhere, but in many places, are lagging behind. And the need for zero trust, especially with SaaS platforms and where data is less perimeterized, is a necessity. And for managing it in an effective way, for continuously validating that the user indeed needs the data, and regardless of RBAC, ABAC, and I agree with that the ABAC can give an edge. The act of granting and revoking access to data needs to be very simple for users, so they can request access to data and lose that access to data in a very simple way. And only when security is also very simple, people will not also look for bypasses around it and try to get access for lifetime when they don't need it. So it's going to, by making data access simple, we also make it more secure, because we can give access for more limited times, and basically that goes hand in hand with zero trust for data access.
Yeah, and we hadn't even talked about automation yet, so maybe I'll hold that until, after a thought here. So it seems like companies are more comfortable outsourcing the data architecture to the cloud. Are they more comfortable, let's say, moving security capabilities and control, also availability and other requirements outside of their control to the cloud? What do you guys think about that? Mark, maybe?
Yeah, I'm seeing a bit of a transformation among a lot of the IT groups that we work with, where originally it was on-prem, and obviously most organizations are now moving off of on-prem. I think a lot of the capabilities that we're talking about from a security perspective, or availability, is stuff that they won't necessarily configure or own. It will be a service, and I'd like to think so. I think the savvier IT organizations will realize that this is a requirement, and the best way to get this requirement is by using a vendor, or using, it's something that we don't necessarily have our hands on. I'd like to think that's the case. I'd be curious what the other panelists think on that.
Well, we say cloud, I mean, you're talking, I'm sorry.
Please go on, Dave.
I was just going to say, you really have to define, are we talking, software as a service, where, of course, you sign up for this and you sign up for their guarantees of availability, their guarantees of security. And there's, at that point, yes, you are, relinquishing control and hoping that the cloud vendor is going to be able to meet their SLAs and guarantee secure access to your data, but then there's the other side of the cloud, infrastructure as a service, and I think people learn, or maybe have a misconception early on that, hey, I'm going to move my on-prem data center and just kind of duplicate it in infrastructure as a service, and I can forget about everything. And no, I mean, the cloud will provide you the tools, but you are still responsible. There's the responsibility lies. You don't have to hire security guards to lock your data center, cloud vendor is going to do that, but you still have to configure all the security, and you still have to manage your data and make sure your data is secure. So there's a little bit of learning curve there where people, might assume they're getting more than they really are. So that's always a challenge, educating people what you're actually getting. They read the headlines. Oh, move to the cloud, not available, highly available, all this and the other. But you have to dive a layer under that and say, yeah, they give you the tools, but it's really still incumbent upon you to make sure you meet your security and availability needs.
And Dave, before you finish, I can't help but see all the instruments in the background. If the cloud was a trombone, how would you play it? No, I'm just kidding.
Loud, yeah. Anything loud, that's it.
I agree with Dave, though. I think that is the challenge. It's the cloud presents itself like a nice solution wrapped in a bow, right? And for a finance guy like me, that's really attractive, right? It sort of checks a bunch of boxes, both from a protection standpoint and financial standpoint. But the reality is, they have incentives that maybe create a little bit of misalignment for folks adopting the cloud, right? So you need to be careful about what that full throttle approach means and how you need to sort of shut the back door if you go that direction. So I totally agree with what Dave was pointing out there, that challenge.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
I want to give one example. So whenever we work with a lot of our customers, that's what I think we have seen that organization want to have something which is in cloud because it makes things faster for them. They want to buy something SaaS specific or SaaS first. But at the same time, what happens is that when it comes to implementation, and somebody gave an analogy of security guard, right? That whenever it comes to creating a policy, governing a policy, they really want to have that control by themselves. And a lot of time, what happens is that they have the data strategy where they want to go, but they don't know the path, and that's where sometimes we help them creating that path. That okay, this is how you can leverage and go and to your end goal. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that people adopt which is cloud or cloud centric software, but at the same time, when it comes to controlling the policies or governing the policies, they don't want to lose control over it.
Okay, and let's talk a little bit about automation. So to me, you can't truly have a conversation about the future unless you talk about automating workloads and also maybe even you sprinkle in a little bit of AI and ML, which there's a lot of talk about Chat GPT and how AI is going to either ruin the world or help make the world a better place. Where do you guys see AI and ML fitting into the picture when it comes to the future of cloud data protection? Let's see who's smiling the most. Ben, there you go.
No, I was just going to type that to open the AI ChatGPT to see what it has to say.
Yeah.
Why not ask him?
Yeah. When you mentioned ChatGPT, so I was asked to join this panel, and I know you're all security experts, and it's not really my area. And so some of these topics were new to me. I had ChatGPT. What is this? And so AI, it's amazing. I don't know. I can't tell you how it's going to apply to the data access and security, but the ChatGPT is really just incredible of what you can do and what you can learn just typing in a question.
I guess I'll present a little bit of a contrary opinion. I think there's some hope that when it comes to records retention, classifying sensitive information, other types of content, that we're going to be able to take the user out of that completely. The reality is there are certain types of personal information which has a regular expression, which is very easy to programmatically identify and secure. But there's also an awful lot that isn't. And if you look at how for example, California or Europe defines privacy, not all of that is easily identifiable. The same thing, and the problem is worse in the world of records retention and how long should we save something or not. You sort of need both. On one hand, you need very close to the users to say, hey, this is important or this is personal information. And unfortunately, we're not yet, I'd like it, but we're not yet where we can not have the user have some way of identifying what's important and what's personal. But on the backside of it too, just because we have so much data all over the place, we still need some level of automation and identification to be able to do that. I listen to some people talk and they're like, oh no, we're just going to have one big auto classification that will do everything. I'd love to see it, but I still think we're at least 5 or 10 years away from that.
I completely agree with Mark. I think that the AI, as with other technology, is great. It can't do anything, just like you can't do anything with other tools. It's good for its purposes. Some of the things it will give a huge boost, and it gives a huge boost in many parts of technology, and some of them less so, or even the opposite. But I'd like to touch the other topic that you mentioned, and it was easy to get distracted by mentioning ChatGPT, which is automation, which we see as something that funnily, sometimes the teams that are very full of very smart people and very capable people who are getting paid a lot, like DevOps, like data engineers, are in many organizations still doing manual things, like handling access control. And in many cases that eats away 20-30% of their time, writing manual code or going into databases and data platforms, granting and revoking permissions. And that's something that I'm sure, because most of the organizations are expanding the data use in their companies, I'm sure that there will see much more automation in the upcoming years, and we've seen a lot more automation already in the last few years.
If I could add, in our small space, it's clearly a need to develop some level of automation to help orchestrate your disaster recovery response, given the myriad of tools people are using, how those tools integrate, what sequence, and how they follow ultimately your policies and procedures that help you most efficiently mitigate and recover from the disasters. So we see a big need there. Whether you want to call it AI or ML, it's really automation with the right intersection of manual intervention at key decision points so that you can most effectively and most efficiently process your response.
All right. Have we all typed in our answers to ChatGPT and received the response? All right. I'm also curious as well, because there's been a lot of layoffs in the tech industry, et cetera, and I'm curious to maybe hear from at least three of you. What advice would you have for someone in the space right now, in particular data protection and compliance and security? What advice would you give to them right now? And we're approaching the holiday season as well. I'm curious to hear what some of you have to say.
I guess I've been around the industry a long time. My first bit of advice is it's just the nature of the industry. It may not feel like it. It's maybe been a while. It's not. We go ups and downs in this industry, and the longer you're in it, the more typical these seem. Just because your company may have laid you off or you may have other issues doesn't mean you have value. It just takes a level of persistence. It takes a level of keeping on at it. I know sometimes it doesn't feel that way. Sometimes it feels like rejection. But over time, you'll realize it wasn't me, it was them. And the more you can say, I'm good, or I add value, and continue to communicate that to prospective employers or other people like that, I think you're going to be in a good position. Again, you may feel like you've been sucker punched. Rest a little bit, but then go back hard, because there's a lot of very bright, talented, smart, valuable people for whom that there is a place there in the industry. They just have to find it.
Yeah, and I agree what Marcus says, because of the whole economy. Sometimes what happens is, because companies, organizations have to take certain decisions, and it comes to eventually being a couple of bright or good people. So I feel that and second part is that that nowadays I think in general, the social communities are very strong. And I'll give an example. This is what I have been observing, at least on LinkedIn for past 30, 45 days, that every time there is a major layoff happens, there are a group of people who will put together jobs, in a specific industry, and then they will just keep sharing it. I think that really helps as a professional, as a human, that, okay, if I don't have any opportunity in my organization, maybe I can reshare something which is already existing. So I hear what I think. I just want to second Mark's thought that sometimes it's not the individual, it's the whole economy. But at the same time, companies are hiring good people, and there is definitely good amount of people who are kind of sharing already a list of jobs or creating more awareness around it.
Yeah, I'd say if you left your social media, your LinkedIn, and all your social contacts, you left that kind of wilt on the tree a little bit. Make sure that that's up to date. But not only that, when I'm hiring, I'm always looking for someone who not only has the knowledge, but also can communicate well. So if you don't have a blog, start a blog, whatever, even if it's just commenting on other people's blogs. But having a presence out there with people and a history where I can go and look and get a feel for not only your expertise, but what you're interested in. And that really, that always piques my interest more when I can see some content that you've been responsible for. So that would be my social media. Make sure you're active there, and start a blog or podcast or whatever it is. It doesn't cost anything.
All right. And you know what? I really love all of those responses. And I've been trying to help out on all of those fronts. Super active on LinkedIn. So I also recommend that, everyone out there, please, follow me on LinkedIn, follow each one of these panelists on LinkedIn as well. You don't have to be in marketing to market yourself and brand yourself. It's a natural ebb and flow of the digital transformation that we're in today. And if you are not on LinkedIn and you're not active, then you might be a little bit behind the curve, because I teach my children, you need a profile, you need to post, you need to share small videos, and also write something that's impactful and insightful. So maybe, one last comment, if anyone else has thought of anything that they would like to just provide is around advice on, anyone who is out there and seeking and looking for another position that has been impacted.
So I'd just like to say something. First of all, that from my personal experience, I've been in some bad spots, and usually always when I persevered, it was eventually, you're saying it was for the best. I know it's just my experience, but and you need to be super energized. And the great thing, I think, is that today you are able to learn a lot on your own and get a lot of learning materials and videos, and you can learn anything almost. So that's also something, like, make use of, don't stop running when even if you're in that tight spot. And third, like, in a personal level, feel free to reach out to me in case I can connect you. I know I can't do it for 10,000 people, but I can do my best if anyone needs something, even a LinkedIn like or share.
Excellent discussion, gentlemen, and fine words to close on, Ben. Thank you for that. So as we wrap up today's topic, I want to invite each of you to give 30 seconds of self-promotion, whether you want to promote your book, your Twitter, your company solution. The floor is yours. Demetrius will end with you. So Ben, let's go right back to you.
Okay, so first, it was a pleasure. And for anything that's related to securing sensitive data and self-service to data, feel free to visit us at satoricyber.com and schedule a demo or read the information in there. And I'd also like to make a special promotion to my son's blog post, just in light of the latest comment. which is sag0li.com.
Great, thank you. AJ.
Well, I want to thank everyone. It's a really honor to be here. Great discussion, great learning for sure. I want to talk a little bit about Immuta. We are a data security platform. So if you are really looking for your data governance and data security transformation journey, our product can literally help you to scale, and reach the goal much faster. And personally, you can connect me with on LinkedIn, search for Ajay Patel. I'm product manager. I love to talk about products, how innovation can be done and entrepreneurship. I'm very passionate about photography. So, happy to connect on LinkedIn or Twitter. So thank you so much. That's it.
You're very welcome. I love how everyone is so friendly and welcoming. Mark, you're up next.
So we're an independent company. We don't sell any products or take any referral fees. We just help large organizations. And what we do really well is we help understand and marry legal and regulatory and privacy requirements with technology. So sometimes you need somebody to sort of help translate or get stuff in the middle. And likewise, we're very, very successful in helping organizations of all types understand how do they save the right stuff, how do they secure it, how do they manage it, how do they make it available, and how do they delete it when they want to.
Excellent, fantastic. Thank you. Rob.
Yeah, first off, thank you so much for having me, Jonathan and Demetrius. It's been a pleasure. Thanks to my esteemed colleagues as well. Again, CEO of Infrascale. Hope that you guys think of us when you're looking at either your on-prem, hybrid, full cloud solution for data protection and availability. We bill ourselves as the most cost-effective provider out there in the market and have a tremendous amount of flexibility built into our system to handle your infrastructure needs.
Excellent, thank you. Dave, let's go to you next.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. A shout out for my blog, Clustering for Mere Mortals. You can learn all about high availability failover clustering. Silos Technology, once again, been in business since 1999, providing high availability disaster recovery for your business critical applications on Windows and Linux, cloud, virtual, hybrid, you name it. We're your availability solution.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Demetrius.
All right, man, this was a tough crowd. I had to crack a joke just to get everyone smiling. But Demetrius Malbrough, once again, host of Data Protection Gumbo. So check out the podcast, dataprotectiongumbo.com. Also, I am also willing to help connect you in the backup and recovery industry. So I have a LinkedIn group with over 25,000 professionals in it. That group is called Backup and Recovery Professionals. And also the podcast boasts over 10,000 listeners monthly. So episodes are published weekly on Tuesday. So super, super, super excited to be here as a panel, as a moderator, and to interact with the panelists. So enjoy, everyone.
Thank you very much for your time and for your moderation skills. Again, Demetrius, you did 2 of these today, so really double the thanks to you. And to the rest of our group. You gentlemen all did a great job. That sadly will do it for this topic, though, but we encourage you to stick around for tomorrow as we do this all again. 4 hours of back-to-back-to-back-to-back coverage of WorkTech. We begin the conversations at 11 a.m. Eastern as we discuss the proliferation of cloud-based automation technologies. Thank you again to everyone here and those of you watching at home. I hope we had some education and entertainment for you this afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you again. Have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Ron. Bye.